Before we dive into this chilling tale, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. You won't want to miss the true, dark accounts I'm about to share. So sit tight and let's begin. It happened on February 11th, 2019, in a small, damp city just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. I was living alone back then, trying to get through a cold winter in a basement apartment that smelled like mold and broken promises. Money was tight, really tight. I had just lost my part-time job in a bookstore because they shut down without notice. I remember sitting on my mattress on the floor, wrapped in 2 hoodies, scrolling through Craigslist on my cracked laptop. I was looking for anything: a cheap couch, a roommate, even a cash under the table gig. Anything that could get me through the month. That's when I saw the listing. The title didn't look any different from the others. Just said, fully furnished apartment, downtown, $300 month, no deposit, no phone number. Just an address, and a note in small text that said, viewing only allowed at 3:33 a.m. Come alone. I thought it was a prank. Who shows an apartment in the middle of the night? But the price pulled me in. I clicked. The pictures were blurry, like someone had taken them while moving. There were chairs with sheets on them. A bed that looked untouched. A long hallway with a mirror at the end, cracked at the edges. The kind of mirror that belongs in motels where bad things happen. I messaged the poster anyway, mostly out of curiosity. I remember typing something like, still available? And the reply came back in under 10 seconds. You may come. Do not bring anyone. No emojis, no name. The reply was so fast it didn't feel human. Still, something in me said go. Maybe it was the desperation, or maybe just plain stupidity. But I set an alarm for 3 a.m. I didn't even tell anyone I was going. When the time came, I put on my boots, grabbed a flashlight, and walked the 5 blocks to the address. The building was older than it looked on Google Maps. Dark bricks, windows boarded on the 2nd floor. No lights. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside and immediately smelled something like wet carpet and burnt plastic. I thought about turning around, but the hallway was already pulling me in. There was no sound. Not even traffic from the street. Just my own footsteps on the wooden floor dot at the end of the hallway. Apartment 303. The door was already open a crack. I knocked once. Nothing. I pushed the door slowly and stepped inside. It felt like the air had changed. Everything was still. Too still. The apartment looked exactly like the pictures, white sheets covering everything. Dust in the air, moving like it was underwater. I took 1 step in. The door gently shut behind me. And that's when I realized I hadn't seen a single mirror on the way in. But there was one in front of me now, tall, standing at the end of the narrow hallway inside the apartment. The reflection wasn't moving the way it should have. And neither was I. I stood there, staring at the mirror, trying to convince myself the angle was off, or maybe the light was playing tricks on me. But the reflection didn't match my movements. When I tilted my head slightly, the version of me inside the mirror just stood still, eyes wide open, like it was waiting. I blinked. It didn't. That's when my hands started to shake. I turned my head for just a second, and when I looked back, the mirror was empty. No reflection, just the room behind me. And yet, I was standing right in front of it. My mouth went dry. I stepped back, but the floor creaked in the wrong direction, like the sound was coming from somewhere else. I turned around quickly, hoping. Maybe someone else was in the apartment, maybe the person showing it. But there was no one, just the same strange silence. I took a breath and walked further in. There was a table in the center of the room with something laid on top of it, a Polaroid photo, face down. I picked it up. The picture was of a man mid-scream. His eyes were scratched out with something sharp, and across the bottom, in shaky red ink, was written, "He opened the wrong door." I dropped the photo. My stomach turned. I walked toward the kitchen area, hoping to find a light switch, but my flashlight flickered, and for a second, I saw movement in the hallway mirror again. I turned fast. The reflection was back. But now, there were two people in the mirror. And I was still alone in the room. I didn't know what to think. My pulse was racing, my hands shaking. I told myself it was just nerves, maybe a malfunction with the mirror, something wrong with the old lights. But then, just as I was about to walk away, I heard it. A faint sound, almost like a whisper, coming from the hallway behind me. I froze. The whisper was so soft at first, I wasn't sure if it was real. But then I heard it again, clearer this time. Don't turn around. The words felt like they were coming from somewhere deep within the walls, maybe even the floor beneath my feet. The air got heavier, colder. I looked toward the hallway. The door to the bathroom was ajar, but there was no light. Just shadows. And the more I stared at it, the more I realized that the hallway didn't seem right. It looked like it was. Stretching, like the walls were moving in on me. My breath quickened. I turned to the table again, trying to focus, trying to calm myself. That's when I noticed something new. A small landline phone sitting there, hidden behind the Polaroid. It wasn't plugged into anything, just sitting on the table like it had been waiting for me. I picked it up without thinking. The receiver was warm. I don't know why I thought it would be cold. I held it to my ear. There was no dial tone, only static. And then, through the static, I heard something that made my stomach drop. They're all gone. You're next. The voice was distorted, but there was something about it. It wasn't human. It was like a recording, but one that shouldn't have been recorded. The phone line clicked, and then there was nothing. I put the phone down in a rush, but my hands were trembling. I felt sick, like the room itself was closing in around me. That's when I heard the door behind me click shut. Not the front door, the bathroom door. I hadn't even noticed it had opened. I stood frozen, watching it. Slowly, it creaked open again. I couldn't move. The bathroom door had opened just a crack, but it felt like the entire room had shifted. The air was thick, heavier than before, pressing against my chest. My feet were frozen in place, my body telling me to run, but my mind wouldn't let me. I had to get out. I turned back toward the front door, but my body was still frozen. Every step I took toward it felt like I was dragging through quicksand. The whispers grew louder now, all around me, until I couldn't tell where they were coming from. In my head, in the walls, or maybe just from the deep emptiness in the room. I glanced back at the bathroom. The door was still slightly open. Something moved inside, just a shadow, but it was enough to make my skin crawl. I couldn't take it anymore. My instincts screamed for me to leave. I took a step toward the front door, then another. But just as my hand reached for the knob, I heard it. A loud, sharp click. I spun around, my heart skipping a beat. The mirror was no longer reflecting the room. The reflection, the same one I saw earlier, was now looking directly at me. And I wasn't moving in the reflection. It was like I had become a stranger to myself. My reflection smiled, slowly and unnaturally, its eyes wide open and locked onto mine. A sudden gut-wrenching feeling of nausea hit me. I stepped back, stumbling toward the front door. I had to get out. I had to get away from this place. But as my hand reached for the door handle again, I realized the room had changed. The hallway was different. The walls, the floor, even the air. It was all wrong. It felt suffocating. I turned to the door, yanked on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The door had locked itself from the inside. Panic surged through me. I pulled harder on the door handle, desperate to escape, but the door remained stubbornly shut. The lock rattled as I tugged on it, but there was no give. My breath quickened, my vision starting to blur. I had to get out. My mind screamed at me, but every attempt felt like it was pulling me deeper into this nightmare. I spun around. looking for something, anything, to break the tension. The apartment now felt impossibly larger, like it had expanded around me, stretching its walls outward. The corners of the room seemed to close in as though it was suffocating me. The mirror at the end of the hallway no longer reflected me. Instead, the empty space seemed to be staring at me, silently mocking my helplessness. The whispers grew louder, clearer. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew one thing. They weren't coming from the walls. They were coming from inside my head. The walls, the floor, the ceiling. They were breathing with me, as though the apartment itself was alive, watching me. I ran across the room to the window, hoping for some relief, but when I looked out, there was nothing. The city outside, the street lights, the cars, all of it was gone. There was just an endless black void, stretching out for miles. The only thing that seemed real was the apartment, the oppressive silence, and the haunting whispers in the air. Then from behind me, I heard something else, a clicking sound. Not from the door, but from deeper inside the apartment. I turned, but there was nothing. Only darkness. The floor beneath me groaned. I stumbled backward, falling into the wall. My hands instinctively grasped at the wallpaper, trying to steady myself, but it felt like it was moving, like it was breathing too. That's when I saw it, a Polaroid photo. The same one I had seen earlier, now on the floor. But this time, the photo was different. It wasn't of the man anymore. It was of me, my face twisted in terror, my eyes wide with fear. Beneath the picture, scrawled in red ink, were the words, "You opened the wrong door." I screamed, scrambling to my feet. But the walls felt like they were pressing in on me. I couldn't breathe. The air was thick, heavier than before, and I could feel the panic rising in my chest. I had to get out. I had to. The lights flickered dot, and then they went out completely dot. It was total darkness. The kind of darkness that felt like it could swallow you whole. My breath came in shallow, rapid gasps as I fumbled through the air, my hands reaching for anything to anchor me. The oppressive silence was overwhelming. Not even the sound of my own footsteps could be heard. Then came the whisper. Again, louder this time, as if someone was breathing directly into my ear. "Don't move." The words were like a cold rush, sending a shiver down my spine. I froze. There was no way I could move, even if I wanted to. My legs felt like stone. My feet stuck to the floor. I squinted into the darkness, waiting for my eyes to adjust, but there was no sign of light. I reached for the flashlight in my pocket, only to realize it had gone out long ago. Panic started to claw at me, my chest tightening, my head spinning. I heard something I couldn't explain, the soft shuffle of footsteps. Slow, calculated, coming closer. My heart hammered in my chest. I instinctively reached for my phone. But when I turned it on, the screen was blank. There was no signal, no Wi-Fi, nothing. The room was closing in on me, and it felt like I wasn't alone anymore. I heard the footsteps again. They were louder now, coming from just a few feet away. I backed away slowly, hoping to find a corner or something to hide behind, but it was like the apartment was growing. There was no corner, no space left to retreat to. Then, a cold hand brushed my shoulder. I spun around, my body trembling. But there was no one there, just the empty, suffocating air. I was alone, or at least I thought I was, but the whispers kept coming. "They're coming for you." The voice was now inside my head, the words repeating over and over like a mantra. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on. I blinked, disoriented, trying to adjust. The room looked the same, but something was wrong. The walls seemed to be warped, the floor uneven, and I noticed the mirror at the end of the hall was now cracked in half. I felt a tight knot of dread in my stomach. I didn't want to look, but my eyes were drawn to it. The reflection in the shattered mirror was not mine. It was the reflection of a figure, tall, shadowed, and it was moving toward me. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest as the figure in the mirror began to move, slow at first, then faster, almost too fast to track. My eyes widened, but I couldn't tear my gaze away. The reflection was coming closer, the figure's limbs jerking at odd angles like it wasn't meant to move that way. It was stretching toward me, and the more I watched, the more I realized it wasn't just a reflection, it was something else. Something that didn't belong in this world. The room felt colder now, the air thick with a suffocating presence. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. "It knows you're here." My mind screamed to look away, to run, but my body couldn't move. I was paralyzed, trapped in the gaze of that twisted reflection. And then, I saw it, a shadow moving behind. Me, right there in the room. I didn't dare turn around, but I could feel its presence. It was tall, its shape distorted, like something not meant to be seen by human eyes. My breath caught in my throat. The figure in the mirror twisted its head, its neck creaking like an gun. Old door opening, and it smiled, not a normal smile. The smile was wide, too wide, stretching across its face like it was tearing its skin apart. It was the kind of smile you see in nightmares, the kind that makes you question if you've ever been truly alone. It leaned toward me, its reflection moving closer, as if it was about to step through the glass and into the room. I stumbled backward, my legs giving way, and I fell to the floor. My palms scraped against the cold wood, but I couldn't stop myself. The whispers in my head became a chorus of maddening voices. "It's here. It's here." The lights flickered again, then went out, plunging me into darkness. But even in the pitch black, I could still feel it. The figure. It was right behind me now, breathing down my neck. The air around me grew thick, like I was suffocating, drowning in the oppressive weight of its presence. A sound broke the silence. The sharp click of a door, followed by slow, deliberate footsteps. Someone was walking toward me, but it wasn't human. I couldn't explain it. I didn't want to know. My mind raced as I scrambled to my feet, pushing myself to the door once more. But before I could reach it, I heard the voice again, closer. "Now right beside me. You can't leave. You opened the wrong door." I reached for the handle, pulling with all my strength, but the door wouldn't budge. My breath was ragged, and I could feel panic threatening to take over. My chest ached. My body was screaming at me to get out, to survive that, and just as I thought I would lose my mind, the door opened. The door creaked open slowly, like it was reluctant to let me go. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the threshold. The dark hallway on the other side felt like a void, a place where light didn't reach. The cold air from outside the room washed over me, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. But the whispers didn't stop. They were all around me, louder now, like they were closing in. I hesitated, fear clawing at my throat. But something inside me, a raw, primal instinct, pushed me forward. I didn't want to know what was in that room anymore. I didn't want to stay. But I had no choice. I stepped into the hallway, my feet moving on their own. The walls stretched upward, high and dark, the shadows creeping toward me like they were alive. As I walked, I could feel the temperature dropping. The air was so cold now that it burned my lungs with every breath. My skin prickled with a sensation I couldn't explain, like invisible fingers were brushing against me, watching me. I kept moving, my footsteps echoing in the silence. I didn't dare look back. The door behind me slammed shut with a violent force, so loud it made me jump. And that's when I saw it. A figure at the end of the hallway. It was standing still, watching me. Its shape was hard to make out in the darkness, but I could see its eyes. Bright, unblinking, empty. It didn't move. It didn't need to. I stopped dead in my tracks, my breath catching in my throat. The figure was wearing what looked like a suit, but its skin was stretched too tightly across its bones, its face devoid of features. It had no mouth, no nose, just empty eye sockets, and its skin was pale, almost translucent. I could see the veins beneath it, throbbing like they were a live dot. It was the same figure from the mirror. The one that had smiled at me. The one that had been standing behind me. But now it was here. The whispers rose again, louder this time, and I could barely make them out. It's your turn. You opened the wrong door. I turned to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. I was frozen in place, paralyzed by a fear that seeped into my bones. The figure took a step forward, its long, thin fingers extending toward me. I finally found my legs. Again, I bolted. I didn't care where I was going, as long as it was away from that thing. I ran, my breath coming in sharp, desperate gasps. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, the walls closing in around me as I sprinted down the dark passage. The air was thick, suffocating, and I could hear the sound of footsteps behind me, growing closer with every passing second. It was chasing me. I looked ahead and saw the exit, a small door at the end of the hallway. Freedom. But just as I reached for the handle, the door slammed shut with a deafening sound. My hand touched the cold metal of the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers were deafening now, surrounding me. I spun around, my mind racing, and that's when I saw it. The figure was right behind me. My blood ran cold as I turned to face it. The figure was standing inches from me now, its hollow eyes locked onto mine. The air felt like it was thickening around me, suffocating me, and I couldn't breathe. My heart was thundering in my chest, and the whispers were louder than ever, swirling around me like a swarm of bees. It's too late. You can't escape. I stumbled back, my feet tripping over each other as I fell to the floor. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, its eyes never leaving mine. I could hear its breathing, or at least what I thought was breathing. It was shallow, uneven, like it wasn't quite alive. The small door at the end of the hall. I had to get to it. It was the only way out. But how? My legs felt like lead. Every time I tried to move, it felt as though the very air around me was pushing me back, forcing me to stay. The figure took another step forward, its long, pale fingers reaching toward me. I instinctively crawled backward, my hands scraping against the floor. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't allow it crash. The figure's fingers brushed the edge of my wrist, cold as ice, and I flinched. I don't know what happened next. All I knew was that something in the air snapped, as if reality itself was bending. The floor beneath me cracked, a long, jagged split shooting out from where the figure had stood. The crack grew wider, revealing a dark abyss beneath me. The hallway seemed to tilt, like I was falling toward it. My body screamed at me to run, but my legs weren't moving. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp pull from behind, like something invisible, yanked me off the ground. The figure's hollow gaze was still on me as I was dragged toward the void. I screamed. I kicked. But there was no sound. Nothing but the ringing in my ears, the sense of falling. The abyss below me seemed endless, and I could feel the darkness pulling me down, inch by inch. But just as I thought I was going to disappear into it, the door I had seen earlier slammed open. I didn't question it. I didn't hesitate. The door was my only chance. Without thinking, I threw myself toward it, using every ounce of strength I had left. My feet barely touched the ground as I sprinted through the threshold, the dark abyss snapping at my heels. The instant I crossed the doorway, the air changed. It was lighter, fresher. I was outside. My body slammed against cold, concrete, and I gasped for air, my lungs burning as I tried to take in anything resembling normality. The sounds of the whispers faded, the weight of this suffocating fear lifting. But my body was still trembling, still on edge. I looked up, my mind racing. The building I had just escaped from was still there, looming behind me, dark and silent. Was I really outside? Was I free? The cold air felt too real, the city street too quiet. Everything was too calm. I stood up shakily, my knees weak, and turned around. The door I had just passed through was now a solid wall. There was no sign of the hallway, no cracks in the ground, no twisted figure waiting for me on the other side. It was as if nothing had ever happened, but I knew it had. I knew I had almost become a part of that nightmare. I stumbled forward, my breath ragged, trying to piece together what had just happened. The sounds of the city, distant honking horns, the faint murmur of people talking, all felt unreal. I found myself standing on a busy street corner, looking at the city I thought I knew, but it wasn't the same. It was like the world had shifted. When I stepped through that door, the sky above me was too gray, the buildings too close together, the faces of people passing by too unfamiliar. I felt eyes on me. Turning quickly, I saw a man staring directly at me from across the street. He was dressed in a suit, pale, his face emotionless like it had been frozen in time, the same hollow eyes, the same twisted smile. I turned away, my stomach flipping. The man from the mirror, the figure from the hallway. It was him. I ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The sight of him, the twisted smile, those empty eyes haunted me, burned into my memory. My feet pounded against the pavement, each step a desperate attempt to escape, to outrun whatever was chasing me. But I knew it wasn't just him, it was everything. That apartment, that door, that mirror. It was all connected. And no matter how fast I ran, I couldn't outrun the feeling that it was still there, lurking just out of sight. The city was different. The streets were the same, but the air felt wrong, as though I wasn't supposed to be here. As though this wasn't my world anymore. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to keep moving. People passed me by, oblivious to the panic clawing at my chest, their faces unfamiliar and distant. Nothing felt real. I wanted to scream, to tell someone, anyone, what had happened, but I knew they wouldn't believe me. Who would? I turned a corner, my hands trembling, trying to catch my breath. That's when I saw it. A small alleyway between two buildings, dark and narrow. It seemed like the perfect place to hide, to get some space between me and whatever was chasing me. I ducked into it, pressing myself against the brick wall, my heart pounding in my ears. I tried to steady my breathing, but the panic was overwhelming. I felt the walls close in around me, the alleyway too narrow, too dark. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that something was watching me. I wasn't alone. I turned, my breath catching in my throat. At the far end of the alley, in the shadows, I saw a figure standing there, unmoving. It was just a silhouette at first, but as my eyes adjusted, I could see the outline of a man. The same man. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't speak. But I could feel his presence, heavy and suffocating. It was like he was the reason this world felt wrong, the reason I was trapped in this twisted version of reality. I backed away, my legs weak, my mind screaming at me to run, but my body wouldn't obey. I couldn't escape. There was nowhere to hide. The man's eyes glinted in the darkness, his twisted smile growing wider, stretching across his face. I was trapped. "You can't leave," he whispered, his voice like ice, sending a chill through my entire body. And then, just as I thought I was done for, something shifted in the air. The ground beneath me trembled, the walls of the alley swaying like they were alive. The figure wavered, fading in and out of focus. It wasn't real. I had to remind myself, this wasn't real. None of it was. The figure dissolved into the darkness, and with it, the crushing fear that had been suffocating me. I was free, for now. I stumbled out of the alley, my legs shaking like they were made of jelly, and for a brief moment, I thought I was going to collapse right there in the street. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Was I hallucinating? Had it all been a nightmare? I didn't know what was real anymore. The city felt the same, the people, the cars, the buildings, but it was like I was seeing it through a different lens. Everything seemed off. The colors of the world around me felt too vivid, almost too sharp, like I was standing in a painting instead of reality. It was almost as though I had crossed some kind of threshold, a line between what I knew and something ... I took deep breaths, trying to steady myself. I had to get out of here. I needed to find someplace safe, someplace where I could make sense of everything. I turned and began walking down the street, my eyes darting nervously from side to side. But then I saw it, the reflection. It was just a glimpse at first, a flash in the window of a store I passed. The same figure. I froze, my heart racing. He was standing behind me in the reflection, his hollow eyes fixed on me, that smile stretched across his face. He wasn't just following me. He was everywhere. I turned sharply, looking behind me, but there was no one there. The street was empty. Too empty. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't possible. He was in the reflection. How could he be there if I couldn't see him? I glanced back at the window, and he was still there. Closer now, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I didn't have time to think. I turned and ran, not even caring where I was going, just desperate to get away. My feet slapped against the concrete, my heartbeat thumping in my ears. The sound of my breathing was loud, panicked as I pushed through the crowds, trying to get to safety. I looked around, my eyes wild, searching for a way out of this nightmare. People were walking by, oblivious to my panic, their faces blank, as if they couldn't see what I saw. But he was still there, in every reflection. He was following me, inch by inch, and I could feel him getting closer. You can't escape. The voice whispered in my head, that cold, chilling voice from the hallway, from the mirror, from the abyss. I had to survive. I had to break free from this, whatever it was. In the distance, I saw a subway entrance. A glimmer of hope, a possible escape. Without thinking, I bolted toward it, ignoring the nagging voice that told me it was useless, that I couldn't outrun this. I didn't care. I had to try. I reached the stairs, my hands gripping the rail as I rushed down into the underground. The moment I stepped onto the platform, I felt a momentary sense of relief. I was alone. I waited for the train, my body trembling, my heart still racing. The darkness of the tunnel seemed safer than the chaos above. But then the lights flickered, and I saw him again. He was standing at the edge of the platform, his eyes locked onto mine. The train screeched into the station, its lights cutting through the dimness of the tunnel, but I didn't move. I couldn't. He was there, standing at the edge of the platform, his figure illuminated by the train's headlights. His smile stretched wider, his eyes gleaming with something I couldn't comprehend. It was like he was waiting for me to make the next move, to decide what was going to happen next. I felt my legs lock in place, the panic starting to swell again, threatening to take over. My mouth was dry, my chest tight, but the train was approaching, closer now. I had to make a choice. I had to act out without thinking. I bolted toward the train, shoving my way through the small crowd of people already standing there. I heard a sharp gasp behind me. I didn't know if it was from one of the commuters or from the figure. I didn't dare look back. I jumped into the train just as the doors began to close. The moment I stepped inside, the doors slammed shut behind me and the train jerked into motion. I pressed my back against the cool glass of the door, my eyes scanning the dimly lit car. People were sitting, talking, some lost in their own world. No one seemed to notice me. No one seemed to realize what was happening. The world felt out of sync, like I was in a parallel reality. I tried to calm myself, taking deep breaths, but the atmosphere in the train car felt too heavy. Something was wrong. The figure wasn't here, but I could feel him, as if his presence was still lingering in the air, watching me, waiting. He was everywhere. The train continued down the tracks, the noise of the wheels on metal filling the car. but all I could hear in my head was that whispering voice. You can't escape. You belong to me now. I shut my eyes tightly, trying to block it out, but the words echoed louder and louder. My mind was racing, desperate for a way out. I thought about getting off the train, but where would I go? The city didn't feel real anymore. Every street, every corner was a trap. The figure was always there, in the reflection, in the shadows, waiting for me to make a mistake. Suddenly, the train lurched to a stop, throwing me off balance. I grabbed onto the pole beside me to steady myself, but as I did, I caught a glimpse of something in the window, his reflection. He was standing right behind me, his smile impossibly wide. My breath caught in my throat, and I whirled around. My heart pounding. No one was there. The train was empty. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling, but before I could react, the lights flickered again. The train car plunged into darkness. The darkness in the train car was suffocating. I could barely see my own hand in front of my face, and the cold, oppressive air seemed to press in on me from every side. My heart was pounding so loudly in my chest I thought everyone could hear it. But there was no one to hear me, no one to help. The train car was empty, just me in the darkness. And then, that whisper again. You can't escape. It felt like it was inside my head, curling around my thoughts, squeezing tighter with every breath I took. I stumbled toward the door, reaching for the emergency brake, desperate to get out, to do something. But my fingers brushed against something cold and wet. I froze. I pulled my hand back, blinking rapidly to adjust to the darkness. It was blood. I felt a cold wave of nausea wash over me, but before I could step away, the lights flickered back on. The car was still empty, but now there were marks on the floor, trails of blood leading from one end of the car to the other. The stench hit me next, thick and metallic. I gagged, my stomach turning. My mind screamed at me to get out, but I couldn't. The doors were locked. I was trapped. I backed away slowly, my shoes making a soft squeaking sound against the blood-soaked floor. I could still hear the whispers, louder now, more insistent. The blood, it was following me, like it was moving toward me. I was suffocating, drowning in this nightmare. I pressed my back against the wall, my mind racing. What was happening? What did all of this mean? I thought I had escaped. I thought I had left that apartment, left the figure behind. But he was still here. Suddenly, the train lurched again, but this time it was worse. It was like the entire car had been jerked off its tracks. I lost my footing and fell to the floor with a sickening thud. The world spun around me, the lights flickering wildly, and the blood began to move. It wasn't just on the floor anymore. It was creeping up the walls, the ceiling, and it was getting closer. I scrambled to my feet, my pulse racing. There was no escape. The blood was everywhere. It was suffocating me, closing in on me. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it, the figure. He was standing at the far end of the car, but his eyes weren't empty anymore. They were glowing with a sick, unnatural light. He stepped forward slowly, deliberately, the smile on his face growing wider with every inch he moved toward me. You opened the door, he whispered, his voice a low hiss that sent chills down my spine. Now you belong to me. I tried to scream, but the words wouldn't come out. My throat was dry, my body frozen with terror. The figure reached out, his pale hand hovering just inches from my face. I felt the cold from his fingers before I saw them touch my skin, and I gasped as the world around me shifted again. The moment his fingers touched my skin, it was like the entire train car disintegrated. The walls seemed to melt away, the floor crumbling beneath me. I was falling, but not in the way you expect. It wasn't like I was falling through space. It was more like the world was being ripped apart, and I was simply being sucked into the void. I didn't know how long I was falling. Time felt distorted. The air around me felt thick, like I was underwater. There were no sounds, no screams, only the cold, suffocating silence. But I wasn't alone. He was there, in the dark, watching me, waiting. My head spun. I felt like I was being torn apart, but I couldn't scream. My body felt disconnected, like it wasn't even mine anymore. I tried to move, to reach for something, anything, but my limbs were heavy, unresponsive. The whispers started again, soft at first, then louder, louder until they were all I could hear. "You can't escape, you're mine now." The voice was his. The train was gone, the city was gone. Everything that had seemed real, that I had clung to, had faded away, leaving nothing but darkness. And then I saw it, a small flickering light in the distance. A figure. It was him again. The same twisted smile, the same hollow eyes. But now, he was standing in the middle of the void, waiting. "You thought you could leave?" His voice came through the darkness like ice, freezing me in place. "You thought you could escape the game?" I tried to move, but I couldn't. The weight of his words, of his presence, kept me paralyzed, trapped in this nightmare. I could feel the pressure building around me, the suffocating air pressing in from all sides. My mind screamed for a way out, but there was no answer. There was nothing. I was drowning. "You belong to me." His smile widened as he stepped closer, his pale fingers reaching toward me. This time I didn't try to run. There was nowhere to go. He was everywhere. And then, just as his hand was about to touch me, something shifted. The ground beneath me cracked open, and a blinding light poured through. It was warm, a light I hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. It wrapped around me like a protective force, and for a moment, the darkness receded. I gasped for breath, my lungs filling with air again, and the figure, the twisted man, faded away. His voice, his presence, his touch, it all disappeared. I wasn't falling anymore. I wasn't drowning. I was alive. The light faded, and with it, the suffocating darkness. I stood in the middle of what felt like an open field, the sky above me an endless blue, the air fresh and clean. For a moment, I simply stood there, breathing deeply, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Was I free? Was it over? The world felt real again, real in a way it hadn't for what felt like years. There were no reflections, no blood, no whispers. It was just normal, but deep down I knew I couldn't be sure. I looked around, trying to take in my surroundings. There was nothing familiar about this place, but at the same time, it felt like something I had been searching for. I saw a single path cutting through the grass, leading toward what looked like a distant house on the horizon. I didn't know where I was, but I started walking. My legs were stiff, my body tired from the ordeal. I felt the weight of everything that had happened, but a small flicker of hope began to burn inside me. Maybe this was the end. Maybe this place was the escape I had been looking for. But just as I took my first step, I heard it. The whisper, "You can't escape." My heart dropped. I froze, my blood running cold. I turned slowly, but the field was empty. The sky above was still clear. The path ahead still stretched before me. There was nothing there. Nothing but that voice, echoing in my head. "You belong to me." The words wrapped around my mind like a noose, tightening with every beat of my heart. I stumbled backward, my vision blurring, the grass beneath my feet becoming unstable. Suddenly, the ground cracked open beneath me, just like before. The train, the blood, the figure. Everything rushed back in an instant, all the terror, all the helplessness. The world around me dissolved once again into that cold, dark void. And I could feel him there, in the darkness, reaching for me. But this time, something was different. The voice was fading into the distance. I was not going to let it take me again. With every ounce of strength I had left, I fought. I pushed against the suffocating blackness, the whispers, the weight of the void. I refused to be swallowed whole. My body trembled, my breath ragged, but I kept moving. I kept fighting. I didn't know how long I kept going. But when I finally stopped, I felt the ground beneath me solidify. The voice had gone. The darkness had lifted. I looked around, and this time the world was different. Not perfect, but real. I was standing in the middle of a bustling street, surrounded by people who walked past, unaware of my fight. I was a live dot, and as I took my first real breath in what felt like forever, I understood. It wasn't just about escaping the figure. It wasn't just about escaping the apartment, the door, or the train. It was about surviving, and I had survived. No matter how dark, no matter how twisted it had gotten, I had survived. The end of the nightmare was real. The escape was real. And as I looked at the people walking past me, I knew one thing I would never forget, because I wasn't sure I was truly free. But for now, at least I was alive.